the building code, PD 1086, for basically going to be a crash course. Any discussion of the building code that is that compressed will always be a crash course. So I'm going to have to give you this disclaimer. Now, this is obviously not going to be super comprehensive. We'll do our best to cover the most important parts, but I think it's obvious that you're expected to do your own comprehensive study of PD 1086. Okay, it's going to take much longer than that for you to be done with the building code. But yeah, okay, so the building code is obviously PD 1096, Presidential Decree 1096. It was, I think, enacted in the 70s. I can't remember to 1977 or something, but yeah, it was enacted in the 70s. What you need to study is not just the building code, not just PD 1096, but the IRR, or the implementing rules and regulations of PD 1096. Because it's detailed rules and regulations pertaining to the implementation of PD 1096. Again, I'll emphasize that you have to be studying the implementing rules and regulations of PD 1096. Okay, not just PD 1096 itself, but also its implementing rules and regulations, or yung IRR. And most people naman, I think, yung copy of the building code that they have is the IRR. Okay, again, that's what you need to have, and that's what you need to be studying. Okay, I'll begin with rule number one. Okay, general provisions, and I always like to start with the purpose of the building code. Para saan ba yung building code? Why do we have a building code? The purpose is actually stated in rule number one. It's a bit parang nakabaon in one sentence, but it was stated there that the purpose of the building code is to provide a framework of minimum standards and requirements for buildings and structures to regulate and control their location, size, design, quality of materials, construction, use, occupancy, and maintenance. Okay, so it's pretty long, but if you simplify it, the purpose of the code is to set minimum standards and requirements for buildings. Okay, so that's the parang the thing that we're trying to do here. We're trying to set minimum standards and requirements for buildings. And I always like to emphasize the word minimum. No, minimum standards lang to, minimum requirements lang to. What I'm trying to say here is we can be better than the minimum standard or the minimum requirement. That is allowed. Okay? What is obviously not allowed is if we are worse, or if we're lower, or if we're not as good as the minimum, if we don't hit the required minimum standard, that's a problem. Bawal yun. You cannot be substandard, you cannot be subpar, you cannot be below the minimum. But if you'd like to improve upon the minimum, if you'd like to be better than the minimum, you can definitely do that. So yun nga, parang the building code just sets this parang baseline that you have to meet. Okay, if you want to be better than that baseline, that's it. Okay, let's talk about the scope of the building code. Basically, this is about are all buildings covered, and do all buildings need to comply with the requirements? Okay. Generally, the answer is yes. Okay, nakalagay dito, the National Building Code applies to the design, the location, siting, construction, alteration, repair, conversion, use, occupancy, maintenance, moving, demolition of, and additions to public and private buildings, except these two. Ang pinaka-importanting parts are the last few parts of this slide. So bottom line, the building code applies to all public and private buildings. That's the general rule, no? So all public and private buildings are covered, no, by the building code, must comply with the building code. The only exceptions are traditional dwellings, traditional indigenous family dwellings, which we're going to define in a bit. And the other one is BP 220 housing projects. I understand that you've already studied BP 220, so you know exactly what this is. No, socialized economic housing, basically low-cost housing projects. Because as you know, these projects follow a different set of standards. Medyo downgraded para version of the standard. But yeah, so again, to recap, all buildings, no, whether public or private, must comply with the building code. The only exceptions are two. Traditional indigenous family dwellings is the first exception. The other one is BP 220 housing projects. Okay. Let's now go to this part, definition of terms. Now, I will tell you also Now, in Rule 1, merong terms na define, so you obviously need to read that. But there's also a glossary that some students don't seem to notice. This is not in Rule 1, it's at the end, at the very end of the Building Code IRR, merong glossary doon. Again, glossary, definition of terms din siya. So, baka lang hindi nyo nakikita na meron pang isang glossary at the end. So there's definition of terms in rule number 1, and then there's the glossary of the building code at the end of the thing. So make sure now that you are able to study both. Okay. So some of the basic terms, I won't cover all, sobrang dami nila, but I will cover the most important ones for our discussion today. So the first one is referral codes. So pag sinabing referral codes, we're referring to the various technical professional codes that are supplementary to the building code, like the Structural Code of the Philippines, the National Plumbing Code, yan, mga electrical code, even the Green Building Code. Now, these are all considered referral codes, no? Meaning the building code will refer to them in some instances, but they're considered to be supplementary to the building code. Now, parang building code yung parang supreme code, no? Out of all of them, referral codes yung iba, they're all supplementary to the building code. So that's referral code. Next, the word secretary, as used in the building code, refers to the secretary or the head of the DPWH. This is important, no, because sometimes in the IRR, you'll just see the word secretary and it really doesn't say like secretary ng ano. Okay, we're now clarifying. Now, it's the DPWH secretary that we're referring to when we use the word secretary in the building code. Okay, the term construction refers to all on-site work that's done, from site preparation to excavation, the foundation, assembly of the building components, installation of the building utilities and building equipment. Basically, all of the work that you do on-site to produce the building. Okay, that's construction, which is, and no surprise there, that's exactly what you think construction means. So, there's nothing really parang interesting about the word construction. It's exactly what you think it is. Addition. Any new construction that increases the height or the area of an existing building. Again, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. So you have an existing building and you added to it. Okay? And you know you added to it because either it would have increased in height, or it would have increased in area, or it would have increased in both. Now, lumaki, pinalaki mo, dinagdagan mo yung building, so dapat lumaki yung building. Okay, that's addition. Alteration is any construction that involves changes in the materials. So you're changing the materials, you're changing the partitions, you're changing the location and sizes of openings like doors, windows, you're changing the structural parts, the utilities, the equipment, without increasing the area of the building. So you're just changing the building, you're not making it bigger. Okay, that's alteration. Okay, you're altering the building. Renovation naman is defined as any physical change made on a building to increase the building's value, the building's utility, to improve the building's aesthetic quality. Okay, so you know you're renovating when you're changing the building for these reasons. Okay, again, it's mostly about the reason for changing the building. I mean, that's what determines whether or not you're renovating or whether or not you're renovating the building. What's important is ano ba yung goal mo for changing. If you're changing it to increase the value, to make it more useful, no, increase its utility, or to make it look beautiful, then you're renovating. Okay, you are renovating the building. Conversion is a change in the use or occupancy of a building. So you change the use of a building. You have a building that originally was used as residential, but you're now going to use it as a commercial building. Now you're using it now for commercial purposes. You're converting the building. That's the right word. You're converting the building because you're changing the use of the building. Repair is defined as remedial work done on any damaged or deteriorated portion of a building. So it's just a fancy, I mean, repair is repair. Yun lang yung sinasabi dito. There's really nothing much to say about it. You're repairing it. May nasira and ayusin mo siya. Okay? Demolition is the systematic dismantling or destruction of a building, whether in whole or in part. Okay? So you're destroying the building systematically. It could be you're demolishing the building entirely. Okay? You could be partly demolishing the building. I don't know. That's demolition. No, destruction of a building, systematic. Anything sinasabi ko, see also yung glossary of the building code IRR. It's at the end of the IRR. Um, Bahawkan on real terms, stop in rule number one. There's more, but they're in the glossary. So, hanapin nyo sa durian.